Welcome to the deep dive. You guys sent in some articles, and we decided to take a deep dive into Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, it's a kind of like a spy thriller, but like with real world implications. So this should get interesting.
It's really a fascinating story. I mean, you have technology, global power dynamics, even some pretty interesting personalities.
Well, let's jump right in then. The Wall Street Journal had this report alleging that Elon Musk has been talking to Vladimir Putin regularly since late 2022. I mean, we're talking about the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX.
Right.
A guy with major government contracts?
Yeah, and during a pretty major international conflict.
So what's the big deal with them talking?
Well, I think the timing is what's really interesting. These conversations were apparently happening at the same time that Musk was publicly criticizing the U.S. support for Ukraine, and at the same time, he was getting more vocal in American politics.
That makes you wonder.
Yeah, how connected are these things? Right, like what's going on behind the scenes? And it gets even more interesting. The Wall Street Journal also said that Putin asked Musk for a favor. He wanted Musk to avoid activating Starlink over Taiwan. Wow. Apparently, this was to appease Chinese President Xi Jinping. It's like straight out of a spy novel.
It really highlights how much influence just a single company can have.
And it's all led by one very outspoken dude.
On the global stage,
It's crazy.
Starlink became so important for Ukraine.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
After the Russian invasion, they needed internet access when all the traditional infrastructure was disrupted, and Starlink stepped in.
Wow.
It was a game changer.
So we have Musk with billions of dollars in government contracts through his companies. He's allegedly having private conversations with Putin. And he's weighing in on American politics. There's so much to unpack here.
There really is. And the Wall Street Journal also mentioned that former President Trump had contact with Putin, too, to add even another layer to this whole thing. Musk has publicly endorsed Trump for the upcoming election.
This is a lot more complicated than I initially thought.
It really makes you think about the motivations and the potential conflicts of interest here.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal article cited people familiar with the matter and intelligence sources as their sources.
Right. It's all very hush-hush.
It really adds to the mystery.
We also have to consider what Musk has said in the past.
He's pretty outspoken.
He said his only conversation with Putin was about space exploration.
But he hasn't denied the Wall Street Journal's reporting.
Right. And that silence is very interesting.
So we have this incredibly powerful billionaire having undisclosed conversations with the leader of a country in a major international conflict. The Wall Street Journal said that this is a major national security concern.
And rightfully so.
What do you think?
Well, Musk's companies, SpaceX and Tesla, work a lot with the U.S. government.
Right.
They even have contracts with the military.
So if he's sharing sensitive information or making decisions that could impact national security?
That would be a huge problem.
One of the articles I sent you actually quotes a Trump campaign spokesperson defending Musk's capabilities.
Yeah.
And they emphasize Trump's stance on foreign policy. They claim that Trump is the only candidate who hasn't invaded another country during their presidency.
Yeah.
And that he would prioritize peace through strength to deter Russian aggression.
It sounds like the Trump campaign is trying to connect these events to their broader election narrative.
Interesting.
They're contrasting Trump's experience and approach to foreign policy with other candidates.
I'll be really curious to see how this all plays out as we get closer to the election.
You too.
This is all just a tangled web of personal relationships and political ambitions and international power plays. It's almost impossible to grasp how much influence Musk has.
I think you're seeing how technology, politics, and individual power are all becoming intertwined.
Right.
This situation is raising a lot of really important questions about transparency and accountability and what the role of individuals is in shaping global events.
That's a good point. I think we need to dive a bit deeper into Starlink. It seems like that's at the center of a lot of this. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
So Starlink, it was vital in keeping Ukraine connected.
Absolutely.
After the Russian invasion.
When their internet went out, Starlink stepped in and provided internet access.
Right, for civilians in the military.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember reading about that.
It was amazing.
This technology.
Right.
It was initially designed to provide internet access in like remote areas. And then it became such a crucial tool in a war zone.
It's unbelievable. It shows you how technology can have these unintended consequences, both positive and negative.
It definitely did some good in this case.
Yeah, it helped Ukraine resist the Russian aggression, and they were able to stay connected to the rest of the world.
But then there's the other side of it, where Putin asked Musk not to activate Starlink over Taiwan.
Right.
It sounds like Starlink is also seen as a potential weapon in other conflicts.
Exactly. Taiwan is facing a lot of pressure from China. And they see Starlink as a way to safeguard against communication disruptions if there is a conflict.
So if their ground-based internet gets taken out,
Mm-hmm.
they would still have a way to communicate.
Exactly.
So it's like a tool for freedom and democracy in Ukraine,
Yeah.
but it could be used as leverage in other conflicts.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is.
This really highlights that technology can be used for good or bad.
Right. It's a dual-use thing.
And with that comes a lot of responsibility.
It's interesting how Musk is navigating all of this. I mean, he restricted Ukraine's military use of Starlink to control drones at one point.
Yeah, he's trying to walk a very fine line.
It sounds like it.
He wants to help, but he doesn't want to become too entangled and risk escalating things further.
I can't even imagine how difficult those decisions must be.
No.
He's not a politician or a diplomat,
Mm.
but his actions are influencing the course of a war.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
This really raises some questions about accountability. I mean, if private companies and individuals are playing such a big role in international affairs, who makes sure they're acting in everyone's best interest?
That's a great question. I mean, we have a billionaire entrepreneur with his own political leanings and financial interests, potentially influencing global events through his technology and his relationships with leaders around the world.
That's right. And we have to think about the conflicts of interest that come from his companies having so many government contracts.
Right.
Does that give him an unfair advantage? Does it influence the decisions he makes in these international discussions?
It's definitely worth considering. One of the articles said that some in the U.S. government aren't happy about Musk's communication with Putin, but no one seems to be concerned about any security breaches.
It's definitely a difficult situation for the government.
Yeah.
They want to protect national security, but they also don't want to stop innovation.
Or damage relationships with these big players in tech.
It's a tough balance.
It's crazy how much influence these tech billionaires have.
Yeah, they can impact global affairs.
And they're doing it outside of traditional channels like diplomacy and governments.
But their actions have huge consequences.
It's wild.
We're seeing a shift in power dynamics.
Right.
Technology is changing the world.
And people with the resources to drive that innovation.
They're at the center of it all.
It makes you wonder what the future holds.
Mm-hmm.
How will these relationships between governments, tech companies, and these influential individuals play out?
It's exciting and unnerving all at the same time.
I agree.
It's a new landscape
Yeah.
with a lot of risks, but also a lot of rewards.
I mean, technological advancements could solve some of the biggest problems in the world.
Right.
And it could help us to be more connected.
And create a better future. But there's also the risk that technology could be used in the wrong ways.
Yeah, like concentrating power and making inequality worse.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the allegations and the potential problems and how Starlink fits into all of this. But what has the reaction been? What are people saying about this whole Musk-Putin thing?
Oh, it's definitely gotten a lot of attention. Governments, political commentators, and even just the general public have weighed in. And it's interesting to see how people are interpreting all of this.
Yeah, one of the articles mentioned that some in the White House didn't even know about these conversations between Musk and Putin.
Yeah, I can see why they would be concerned.
Right.
I mean, when you have someone like Musk.
A private citizen with these huge business ties to the government.
Right, and he's having these private conversations with a foreign leader.
Yeah.
Especially one where things are tense. That's going to raise some eyebrows?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if there are backroom deals happening.
Exactly.
It's like, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. And we talked about how the Trump campaign is using all of this to push their foreign policy ideas.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely going to run with it.
Especially with the election coming up.
This is prime campaign material.
It's interesting how people are viewing Musk, though.
Yeah, some people see him as this maverick, like he's challenging the status quo.
Right. He's not afraid to take matters into his own hands.
But other people are more suspicious.
They don't trust his motives.
Right, they question where his loyalties really lie.
And then there's the national security stuff.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation.
It feels like we need to acknowledge that there's a risk,
Yeah.
but we don't want to cause a panic.
And you definitely don't want to make things worse.
It's all about balance.
Governments have to protect national security, but they also have to be really careful not to escalate things.
This whole thing has really highlighted the changing relationship between governments and tech companies. And even just individuals. It feels like the rules are changing.
It's like uncharted territory.
Yeah. And we're not sure what the new rules are yet.
We're seeing technology completely reshape the world.
And with that comes new challenges and opportunities.
Governments, businesses, and people are all trying to figure out how to adapt.
We need to find ways to work together and hold each other accountable.
And manage the risks?
What do you think? Are we headed towards a world where tech billionaires have more influence than governments?
I think that's the million-dollar question. We're seeing power shift.
Yeah.
These people with the vision and resources to make technological advancements, they're becoming really influential on a global scale.
Even if they don't hold office or anything.
And that trend is probably just going to continue.
So what should our listeners take away from all of this? We've covered a lot.
Stay curious, stay informed.
Find good sources of information.
And be open to challenging your own assumptions.
Talk to people who disagree with you.
Be open-minded.
And participate in the political process.
Make your voice heard.
Advocate for the things you believe in.
And hold your elected officials accountable.
This deep dive has really made me think about how technology, politics, and individual power all connect. It's pretty amazing how much influence just one person like Musk can have.
It really makes you realize that decisions made by people in power, whether they're in government or business or tech, they have a huge impact all around the world.
And as technology gets more advanced, we need to be aware of the consequences.
The good and the bad.
Well said. I think this deep dive will give our listeners a lot to think about.
Hopefully it sparks their curiosity.
Yeah, and makes them want to learn more.
And have those tough conversations.
About the challenges facing our world. Well, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep exploring and keep questioning and keep pushing for a better future.